I'm Terry Mizrahi. I'm a professor at the Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College, formerly known as the Hunter College School of Social Work, and I chair our community organizing, planning, and development method. And today we have a real treat working with the career services at Hunter College on career paths in social justice and activism. And today we have a wonderful opportunity to meet and hear from a group of community organizers and social activists who work in very many different communities in New York City. There are programs, educational programs at the different levels, starting with community colleges, in human services and social development. Hunter College here, we have some courses in community organizing at the undergraduate level. And then in the graduate level, a lot of the students who are interested in a career path in social activism may do it if they want a master's degree, MSW in community organizing at Silberman. It could be a master's in urban affairs and planning at Hunter, or even a master's in public health, depending on the areas. Lots of different ways that people could get off along the educational ladder and also make a living. Our panelists will tell them if you make a good living. It's never good enough, but people sustain this work really out of a passion for the work.
I guess I'll start in terms of a timeline. I was, this is a shameless plug for Hunter. I was a Hunter alum. I graduated with a master's in urban affairs. And one of the benefits of the program was that there were a tremendous number of adjuncts and folks that would come in from the sort of various kind of movement issues and movement centers to speak to students, and one of them was a woman named Irma Rodriguez, who was the former executive director at the Queens Community House, and she was talking about the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development, and I thought that was the coolest organization I'd ever heard of, doing really kind of fun and interesting policy work around housing, affordable housing in the city. And so through that connection, I was an intern at ANHD, and then kind of parlayed that internship into a job at Habitat for Humanity, which is where I worked for about 3 years. I sort of, Habitat's kind of mission at that time was, or sort of view of the affordable housing crisis at that time was, well, we can't build our way out of this, so let's sort of leverage our brand and use our brand to sort of work on some policy campaigns where we can sort of influence policy in terms of building more affordable housing. And I just, after about 3 years, realized that the sort of the neighborhood by neighborhood fight that was going on in New York City at that time was really being kind of waged by these sort of locally based groups that were doing real tenant organizing, building by building and block by block. And I sort of, just really, it struck me that that's where I needed to be, and that was where the real battles were kind of being waged. And so when my time at Habitat ended, I started as the lead organizer for Housing Here and Now, which at that time was sort of the housing wing of then Acorn, now NYCC.
I came to the organization as a student who, after many years of working in retail, and not having a high school diploma, I found myself in a situation where I didn't have medical insurance that I needed. I was diagnosed with grave disease, and I was also pregnant at the time. And working 37 hours wasn't enough to get insurance from where I was working in retail, and that still is the case in a lot of retail jobs. So after my 8 months of pregnancy, I applied for public assistance, and it took a little while, a couple of denials at first, and eventually I was able to get the support I needed. And I realized then that I really wanted to complete, get a high school diploma, get a GED, and get some education and training, just maybe even computers. But when I approached the workers at the time saying that I wanted to do some more training, they said that wasn't possible. They don't offer trainings, and I would have to go into their web program, which is a work experience program. It's a mandate that if you're in public assistance or social services, receiving social services, you have to do a mandate of 35 hours here in New York City of some kind of work program by the city, which can mean working in an office for them, or maybe you see them on the subway platform cleaning the subway trains or in the parks. You don't get paid for them, and they really don't lead anywhere. So I was devastated, but I was very lucky, and I love this story because it so happened the bus left me riding across the street from LaGuardia. On my way home, I saw LaGuardia Community College, and I jumped off, and I was able to connect to somebody there who told me that, yes, if you're on public assistance, if you're receiving cash benefits, food stamps, you can go to school. And I connected to a program that CUNY has called COPE. And from there, it just changed my world around. What I realized, though, is that I needed to be working in a place where I can connect to other students who were told the same things, or folks who wanted to be students and were told the same things. Mostly women with 1 or 2 children, and just want to get some education and training. When I connected to Welfare Rights Initiative here at Hunter, which we've been here for 20 years, we're celebrating our 20th year, I found out that over 23,000 CUNY students had been forced out of school because they were told they couldn't go to school. And so I do consider myself very lucky. Right now, we're working with students. I work with students every day who have the same story I had many years ago. And we have a new administration, and we're very happy that we have a new HR administration, and we're waiting to see the results of that. They're positive, but as we know, in social justice work, there's a lot of stereotypes and sort of negative culture that has to be changed. That's different from policy and different from the day-to-day work that we do with the students regarding their paperwork. It's about changing culture and changing people's minds. So that's really the hard part.
I come from generations of labor activists. I'm actually the 4th generation in my family to work for a labor union. Today is the anniversary of the Triangle Fire, the commemoration going on right now of 146 women, mostly women who perished in at that time the worst industrial accident that the United States had ever had. And my great-grandfather was a shirtwaist maker in New York City and an organizer with the Amalgamated Union. So it's in my blood. I went to my first strike when I was in diapers. I was marching picket lines and going to the annual pro-choice rallies that were happening, hundreds of thousands of people in D.C., and had everything set up for me to do this, except I tried to rebel and became apathetic and apolitical in response to all of this in high school, and was an intern at Citibank as a financial analyst intern. And then I went to college, and once I got out on my own, I found the moral brainwashing kicked in, but I got to see what was really going on, and I got to interact with workers who were fighting on campus. I was at the Cornell Labor School, and workers were fighting for a living wage, and I felt anger, deep-seated anger for the first time in a really long time, directed at this world that's making workers fight so hard. So at that time, I was lucky enough that on campuses at that moment was the very beginnings of the United Students Against Sweatshops movement in the late 90s, where student activism was starting to take a different shape, and was lucky enough to tie in and get to be on the first governing board of USAS nationally. So all of these things were sort of building together, and when I graduated college and realized during school that was who I wanted to be. I wanted to be an organizer, and left college and spent the next 15 years of my life dedicated to working on organizing, helping workers make changes. It brought me to 1 million towns and cities and little podunk places, and made me laugh and cry and use parts of myself and my psyche that I never had before. But I am deeply grateful for having the opportunity to have done it.
And I always sort of knew that I was sort of interested in and very angered by the status quo. I remember, from any little social injustice I saw when I was growing up, that I felt deeply angry and really wanted to know how to do something about it. So that kind of passion took me all the way through college. I attended Antioch College, which is a very left-wing radical college, and got to work for a lot of different nonprofits and kind of try out a lot of different jobs while I was there. And after I graduated, I was working as a teaching assistant on a study abroad program, and I was kind of following the Obama election from abroad, and I saw Bertha Lewis, who was formerly the organizing director of ACORN, talking on Democracy Now!, and I thought, when I get home, I'm going to work for that woman. And I got a job as a canvasser, and I've been working in this field ever since. So I worked with ACORN until the right wing attacked and destroyed ACORN, and then when staff and members of New York ACORN were working to build a new social justice and economic justice organization here in New York.
My path to doing this work really started also from birth, but not because my mom was an activist, but more because she was a domestic worker in Central America. And so I grew up in a kind of household where, you know, I really benefited from the woman she worked for, who sent me to amazing schools. I had the opportunity to learn English, but I also got to see the stark difference, right, between my family and the family that she was working for. We had the wonderful opportunity of coming to the U.S., and I really recognized my privilege of being able to go to good schools early on. And when I graduated from college, I decided that I really wanted to stay involved and ensure that all kids had the opportunity for an amazing education, and started doing advocacy work with a small organization, not so small actually, but small in terms of staff, called the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. And I did that for many years, mostly engaging the community around the policy issues that we were debating, that we were trying to convince the state to fund. And it was really rewarding at first, but after a while I started seeing that we were doing a lot of top-down work, advocating on behalf of the community. And while we were engaging the community, I really didn't feel it was genuine. At least from my perspective, it really didn't feel authentic in how we were engaging the community. Particularly how we were engaging grassroots organizations. We were basically asking them to come to rallies, but we weren't necessarily involving them in the planning of all of these things and planning all these actions and really having a say of what they wanted to say to these decision makers. So after a while, I decided to go back to school, had the wonderful opportunity to meet Terry at the School of Social Work, as well as some other amazing professors and colleagues. And honestly, when I went to school, I didn't think I would be doing community organizing. In fact, I remember saying, there's no way I want to do organizing. The hours are crazy. I don't think I could handle it. But going through that experience really allowed me to see how powerful it is to do this work, and how if I really cared about communities creating power and changing their own lives, they needed to be a part of it. And that led me to NICE. Had the good fortune of meeting them while I was in school, got to interview the director, and really valued the work that they were doing with the undocumented immigrant community on workers' rights issues. And it just happened that job opening came up when I was graduating, and I had the good fortune of getting involved with them.
My name is Jason Walker. I'm the HIV/AIDS Community Organizer for Vocal New York. I also coordinate the AIDS Housing Advocacy Network. I've been with Vocal for about 2 years, and I do two things. I organize low-income folks living with HIV. These are homeless, low-income people in New York City who are HIV positive. And I do work to, a little bit about Vocal. Vocal's a grassroots, membership-led organization. So a lot of my work is informed by, our members, right? And my membership is driven and derived from the hospice shelter systems, the HIV/AIDS Services Administration. I organize folks in the shelter systems and help them help identify the problems and the issues that impact some of their barriers to stable housing, and help them get into conversations and be around tables with decision makers to talk about what kind of policies they need to get out of poverty and to get out of homelessness. We kind of do a multifaceted approach of how we organize around these issues, organizing people and organizing institutions. I got into this work, as I said, 2 years ago. Prior, I was in Louisville, Kentucky. I worked for a city legislator for about a year. And before, at the University of Louisville, I did organizing on campus around racial justice issues.
How did you get into it? What sparked your interest in these topics?
A debate. I was a debate geek. I was a debate geek. Proud to say it. I did policy debate at the University of Louisville, but my debate experience was my activism. And there wasn't a lot of folks that looked like me who were participating on a collegiate level in policy debate. So we shifted it a little bit. We wanted to change how debate was structured. We wanted to change how folks thought about argument and argument strategy and how knowledge is produced. So we played Biggie, we played Tupac, and used ways to do cultural things to try to innovate how we communicate ideas, how we talk about public policy in ways that engage folks in the inner city. So that was my activism kind of launched me off, and I used debate as a platform for that. And then on campus, I was president of the NAACP, co-chair of SNCC. We had a SNCC chapter still active on campus. And then from there, moved to New York to start doing community organizing work.
You're a community organizer, you're a policy person, that there's a lot of interconnectedness, and you build your own communities of folks like yourself. So what you see is, what does everybody have in common? So as a professor, I would ask you in the audience to say, well, you can see the social justice, right? There's some underlying issues around economic and social educational opportunities that people need, are not getting, and inequality has come up in many, many times. And I think what you'd want to see in terms of your own interests, and we'll ask you some of your questions and ask our panelists in a minute, what are the skills and values and knowledge that you need to do this work, is to see those commonalities. You can do it on the grassroots level, right? You can do it on the grassroots level. You can build coalitions of organizations. You work on the policy level. The worst that can happen is that you're feeling alone, or you're in competition with each other for these scarce resources, but rather to grow the pie, so to speak, with more voices and, a greater vision.